I was at a dinner party the other night and the subject of selfishness came up. There are so many different versions of selfishness, depending on how old we are, how much we expect other people to cater to our needs, versus when we prioritize our own needs over somebody else's. And then always the question of whose needs are the most important in any given situation. And we've been talking a lot about the archetype of Leo over the last few weeks. Now the sun has left Leo and now it has entered Virgo, but Leo can be very connected to selfishness. That's one of the shadow sides of it, is around what I want and how I want it to go and how I'm going to engineer the situation so that I get my needs met. And then we're moving into Virgo, which is about selflessness and how can I perform for you? How can I do for you? How can I give to the group or to the person? But of course, the shadow side of Virgo is in the resentment that comes up when we do things for other people or when other people do things for us, but not in the right way. So, this is a really relevant topic, and we're going to dive into it this week because Venus is moving into the sign of Leo, and Venus is really active all week. Probably the most activity that we have that's you're going to feel the strongest is the Venus activity this week. So, we are going to talk about how you might feel it and how to really work with it if you want to grow. And I think that's why you come to listen to these talks that I give you. I'm Natha Perkins of Astrology, and this is the path ahead. This is my weekly astrology forecast. I'm going to go through the planetary action of the week through a psychological, spiritual, and astrological lens so that you know what to expect and you know how to really work with yourself to get the best results. And by best results, that's a tricky thing to say in Virgo season because our inner Virgo always wants the best results and the A plus. But this is less about doing it right and more about having the deeper understanding and the awarenesses that you need to begin to navigate this new world. So welcome. If you like my style and you want to book with me privately or work with me in another way, you can find me at electraastrology.com. And let's jump into the charts. So we are looking at the week of August 25th through the 31st. And we have just crossed over our first new moon that brings us into eclipse season. So this new moon at the very beginning of Virgo was a pretty intense one. And at this point, start looking for the themes that are coming up for you because they're going to show you what you're going to be working with in eclipse season. The full moon solar eclipse will be on September 7th. And that'll be at 15 degrees of Pisces, Virgo. And then the new moon lunar eclipse will be on September 21st, and that will be at 29 degrees of Virgo. As we are looking at these eclipses that relate to the Virgo Pisces axis, we're going to be knee deep in these themes around what is right and wrong, and that will relate to our human desire to control. And that's Virgo, and the surrender that's required when you begin to realize that you have very little control. These are thick topics. And back to my dinner party where we began talking about selfishness, what instigated that topic was a talk about cults. And you guys know me, I love reading and researching about cults for many different reasons. I know many people that have gotten caught up in cults or in people that are very cult-like. And here's the thing, anytime that you are not allowed to question, then you begin to veer into the realm of cult-like control. And that can even be true of the way that your inner critic runs the show. A lot of times when we're talking about this archetype of Virgo, and the sun is now in Virgo. By the way, I'm releasing all of my Virgo talks this month on Astrology for Awakening, so make sure to check those out because I'm going deep into the archetype. I also have many other Virgo Pisces talks on the nodes, etc. in my playlist. So if you find this subject interesting, you might want to check those out. Now, even though the archetype of Virgo can look so much like I want to give to you, I want to perform for you, I want your approval, and I'm willing to do what it takes to get it, it can also be a very selfish archetype, especially when it comes down to the other side, which is I want things the way I want them. And I am willing to go to the mat with what I think is right and tell you that you're wrong. And so be watching for how that shows up in your life, especially over the next 6 weeks. because we are being confronted with those places within us that want things to be our way. And the part of us that says, you're not allowed to question. You are not allowed to have a differing opinion. You must follow what I dictate to be true because I'm the one in control here. I'm the one making the decisions. And we all develop this part of us. It's an important part of us. It helps us to navigate through daily life. However, with the South Node being in Virgo, and with this most recent new moon in Virgo and the eclipse in Virgo on the 21st, these are both South Node lunations. And when we have South Node lunations, it speaks to something big that needs to go. We need to release. So we're looking at those places within us where we are holding tight to wanting things the way we want them and objectively thinking that we are right, that we're the only ones that are right. And isn't that in and of itself a form of selfishness? When we presume to be the only right one, or the most righteous one, or the one with the right information, or the right opinion, or the right way of doing something, that inherently makes other people wrong. And when other people are wrong, they're below us. We perceive them to be below us, and we perceive ourselves to be better than, then of course we feel that we deserve more. Now, that said, I want to bring in the fact that North Node in Pisces is about trusting in the divine guidance. It is about trusting where we are being pushed, sometimes even against our will. With Pisces energy, we don't have any control. We don't know what's right or wrong. That's part of what's been so frustrating over this last year as we've been watching Neptune and Saturn going back and forth between Pisces and Aries, is that when they are in Pisces, as they're headed back there now, and the North Node is in Pisces as it is, we don't know the answers. We don't have the control. We don't know what we're supposed to be doing. And we have to have a blind faith that we are being guided in the right direction. So another thing to remember as we're going into eclipse season is that eclipses are about twists of fate, and many doors end up shutting. And in this case, it's going to be the doors that you feel the most controlling around, things that you are holding the tightest to, that you have the most resistance to doing, that you have the least flexibility around. Those are things that are very likely going to crumble before you. So in order to have any modicum of free will through this, it is always best to take the path of least resistance through eclipses. It's best to just allow yourself to be tossed around a little bit and look at it like it's an adventure. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I am just waiting to be shown, which is really different if we're using the example of cult. And the thing with this Piscean energy is that we are allowed to question. We are allowed to say, is this right? What am I doing? What's happening? And then we have to wait for the answer. The answers don't come as quickly as we might like them to. With Virgo, we want that answer yesterday. With Pisces, we're waiting for the answer to be delivered. So this is a stretch and a leap for a lot of us. And we have no choice. We're in it. We are already on the adventure. So let's talk a little bit about Venus, because Venus is really active this week. Venus enters into Leo. So we just spent the last month talking about Leo and how with Leo we are learning about who we are and who we take ourselves to be. We're also watching the influence of the ego that has the desires, the wants, the needs, and can be very similar to the Virgo, I want it my way energy. Venus keeps hitting these gauntlets, right? When Venus was in Cancer, Venus was squaring Saturn and Neptune. Venus was in a quincunx to Pluto. And now, as Venus enters into Leo, she is going to have harmonious aspects right off the bat with both Saturn and Neptune, but she's going to oppose Pluto. So let's talk about Venus and Leo, because this is one of the things that we can use to navigate this adventure. We're going to look at Venus and Leo as if this energy is the tour guide on your adventure. We love Venus. We really like this energy because it's representative of what we want more of. It's love and attraction, romance, desire, pleasure. It's beauty, aesthetics, harmony, balance. It's our self-worth, our money, our possessions, the things that we appreciate about ourselves. It's relational, it's how we collaborate, it's diplomatic, and it's also about fertility and creativity. And especially when Venus is in Leo, it brings into play the creative nature of navigating life. So we're looking at the themes of letting go of our control issues, looking at how we become very fixed on what we think is the right way and the wrong way with our Virgo, how we meddle with situations so that we have them flow the way that we think they should flow. And we know how important it is to be unhooking ourselves from all of those little perfectionistic, rigid ways of being. And this also relates to our control over other people. A lot of times, Virgo under stress turns into hypercritical and nitpicky. And we have all been the target of somebody's Virgo energy nitpicking us. It doesn't feel good. And we have all been the Virgo energy criticizing somebody else. So, as we're looking at releasing ourselves from that, which will be done in pieces, we have to have the awareness that we are acting that out before we can begin. So, a little homework, if you want to take it on, is notice how often you are critical of other people and the way they do things, whether they're doing them right or wrong. And then after that, notice how critical you are of yourself and the standards you hold yourself to, and whether you demand perfection from yourself or not. And most of us do. So when we know that, now we're going to go into our Venus energy. And instead of the focus being on criticizing other people and trying to get them to do things our way, as a counterbalance, we're going to dive into creativity. Venus in Leo is all about really getting into the things that excite you the most. So take a minute and just think about that, because we talk a lot about creativity. I've shared with you guys before that often when I'm doing a reading for somebody and I say, "What do you do that's creative?" people draw a blank. And even for me personally, I have a hard time getting back into my creativity. And I was a professional artist for years. I was a metalsmith, and I could not wait to get down to my studio. Like, I felt this fire that was burning inside of me all the time to get in there. I would descend the stairs and I would get into the studio, and it always had this smell. It was like this cool smell of stones. And I would get in there and my whole system would relax. So think about the times in your life where you've gone into your studio, or maybe it's your art room, or it's the craft store. And you get there and you just feel your whole system relax because you are about to indulge in this creativity. You're about to make something that you have been really excited about making. You've been planning it. You've been getting excited, anticipating your process, how you're going to do it. This could be in your garden. Maybe you're planning to upgrade your garden. It is Virgo season in the Northern Hemisphere. You're planning to go out and harvest some of the fruits and vegetables and flowers that you've been growing. Maybe it's in your kitchen. Maybe you're somebody that loves to cook. You guys have heard me talking about my basil. We have so much basil, and I have been making pesto, which I love. And now I have a whole stockpile of pesto. My mom gave me a ton of cucumbers from her garden. Like, we are in this time of abundance. So maybe you are the gardener. Or one of my dear friends was just telling me she went and bought herself some houseplants because she's feeling the urge to take care of something. So that can also fall under the realm of creativity. Or maybe it's all about the art. Maybe you're creating things, quilts, paintings. I know one of the ways that I create art now is coming up with things like the zodiac journals, which, by the way, those journals are amazing. I go through all 12 of the zodiac signs. You can find them on Amazon. Just put in Natha Perkins and it will bring up the zodiac journals. I love mine. I use it to jot down all of my insight because I have a Mercury journal that I'm currently using. But there are a million ways to be creative. And as we're trying to wrestle this really difficult energy of letting go of control and moving into surrender, because the universe is going to keep requiring that of us. This is a transit, yes, that we're going through. But we've been in training for this since 2011 when Neptune moved into Pisces. Neptune is about to move in permanently to Aries for the next several years. But The North Node is still in Pisces. This is a lesson that's not ever going to end, but we are really in the thick of it right now, which is where we have to just let go and let God, as they say. This is a tricky lesson, but Venus is going to help us get through. And right now, as Venus is in a trine to Saturn, that's the organizing principle that says, hey, why don't you go get yourself some art supplies? Why don't you go get the making so that you can make the pesto or make the hummus? Why don't you go buy some plants for your garden so you can get out there and make it look the way that you want? Saturn says, create structure for yourself, take one small step after another, and eventually you'll meet your goal. And then we look at Neptune here, which is bringing us into the spirituality of our creativity. And the Venus stuff can look like putting creative energy into your relationships, putting creative energy into seeing yourself differently, working with your own self-worthiness. We're not limited to art. We're just simply tapping into some of these bigger Venus questions around giving and receiving of love, which is really different than with Virgo, giving and receiving of advice, right? So just take a minute and tune into that energy of creativity in your body. Where does it live? When you get really excited about something because you know you're about to embark on an adventure, you're working on your metaphorical fertility. What am I bringing into the world? What am I creatively outputting? Where does that energy live? For me, it lives in my heart. That's where I feel it. It's the excitement of, oh, there's something fun coming. And it can be very spiritual, especially if we allow ourselves to be guided by the ideas that descend upon us. And that is very Neptunian. Now, remember right off the bat, on Tuesday, we're watching Venus make this opposition to Pluto. So it's going to bring up some shadow stuff. So, what are Venus shadows? Superficiality, vanity, obsession with your appearance. Watch for those things to come up because your higher self is going to be showing you what doesn't work. Maybe it's overindulgence, laziness, escapism into pleasure. Those are Venus and Taurus things. It's codependence or losing yourself in relationship. Those are Venus and Libra things. Or it could be materialism and distorted senses of value. Pluto always brings up the distortions for us to see so that we can work with them, so we can talk ourselves down. If you happen to be having a moment of low self-worth or you're highly critical, you have to bust yourself. You have to notice that it's happening so that you can come in and be the higher level presence, the higher level adult energy, the witness that comes in and says, we're not going to go there. Let's not talk about that. Because listen, all of us have an inner critic. A lot of us have very loud and cruel inner critics. And if we allow our inner critic to be a cult leader and tell us how we're going to live our life according to everything that we're doing wrong, right? We don't want a cult leader living in our head that's always saying you have to hold yourself to this high perfection standard in order to be okay. Otherwise, you're going to hell. Because guess what? When our inner critic is beating us up, when we're stuck in our Plutonian distortions, that is a version of hell. And so we're really working to pull ourselves out as soon as we realize we're there. As soon as that inner cult leader, that inner critic comes in and says, I'm the only one that knows what's right for you, and you're doing it wrong, and here's how you're going to have to pay. We want to nip that in the bud. Now, we also see that Venus is making a sextile to Uranus. So this is nice because the last time that Venus ran this gauntlet, it was all difficult connections. So at least she has some harmony. She's got harmony with Saturn and Neptune. She's got harmony with Uranus. And Uranus is challenging us right now to redo our perception. Uranus in Gemini keeps saying, think of it a different way. Look at it through a different lens. Maybe it's not like that. Maybe it could be like that. Reevaluate your facts. Are the facts the facts? Are your facts fake news? So there's a lot of really bright movement within this week that is going to swing us through this eclipse season because we already know we're on the move for eclipse season and we don't have a ton of control over where we're going, but we can have some fun. We can get into some creative stuff and we can just trust the process that we are going to be swept in the exact direction that we're supposed to be going. And really, it's about creating beauty that nourishes us and that nourishes community. When we talk about being selfish, selfishness kind of takes us out of community because it puts all of the focus on us and what we want. But ideally, we're working on building reciprocal relationships with one another. And in order to do that, we have to start with cultivating self love and true self worth. So look at your creative endeavors as if you're building something that makes you feel good. You get to look at it afterwards. And even if you don't love the art that you created, you can still love the process of it, you can still see how far you've come and how hard you were willing to work. There's also something about honoring our pleasure as something that's sacred instead of something to feel guilty about. Now, selfish pleasures where other people suffer because we don't want to give up our position or we don't want to give up what we have, that's not the direction that we're wanting to go. So if you notice those things happening in your life, you're acting them out, then that's a call to turn in the other direction where you're creating simple pleasures that are just for you, but that don't negatively impact anybody else. But again, if we listen to that cult leader inner critic inside of us or outside of us, depending on who you're listening to, that wants us to believe that if we aren't attaining some level of perfection, that's our Virgo stuff, then we should feel guilty. We're clicking that off. We don't need that in our system right now. So I'm going to fast forward a few days. I'm going to fast forward to Saturday. We're going to change the subject a little bit because Mars in Libra is opposing Ceres. We've had a lot of Ceres action. Ceres has been a part of some of the last few lunations. Ceres had a square with Jupiter. Ceres is about the self-care. And I always talk about this and how important it is to be honoring of the body. The body is the vessel that is going to point you in the right direction. If you feel constricted, like there's a lump in your throat or a rock in your belly, or your digestion is thrown off, that is your body trying to tell you that you're living out of your alignment. You're probably feeling criticized by your inner critic. You might feel like you can't question anything if you have that inner cult leader that's activated. You might feel like you can't be creative and life is dull. So your body's going to tell you what's happening. And Mars is opposing Ceres this week. So Mars is where we're learning to take, in this case, diplomatic action. So again, tuning into how something feels in your body, how somebody makes you feel when you're around them, how a conversation makes you feel. There is so much wisdom in the body. You have to remember to tune into it. Otherwise, you're just on autopilot, on the path of listening to other people, other things, other news sources, your inner critic, your cult leader, right? When we're out there listening to all the other stuff out there, it's really hard to tune in and listen to what's in here, but it's really important right now. This is a huge piece of the personal work is learning to listen to your body. And Mars is going to keep poking you this week to do that. And then on Sunday, this is the last aspect I'm going to talk about. We see Mercury making a trine to Chiron. So Chiron is the wounded healer. And again, like Chiron wounds pop up and show us things that we're struggling with right now, brings us back into our history and says, hey, this is where it started. And Mercury is great. Mercury is our mind. It's going to help us to explore that. This work is very complex. You're up for it. You can do this. But do not make the mistake of going on autopilot as if only the Virgo things in life get to work, get to the grocery store, cook the meal, send the email. Don't act like those are the only things that are important right now. Because this is so spiritual in nature, this work that we're doing. It is so much about making the connections where the traumatic events in the past still have a negative hold on me now. How can I heal them? What are the parts of me that I'm ignoring, that I'm not tending to? I want to know that they're there so that I can tend to them. What are the downloads and the insights and the intuitive advice that's coming to me from my higher self, from my higher power, from God? I want to be a clear, awake, and aware conduit so that I can actually receive those messages, so that I'm not just head down doing the chores. Okay, so it's eclipse season. We are officially in it. I will see you guys next week as we will talk about our full moon lunar eclipse. It's going to be a good one. I hope that you have a great week, and I'll talk to you soon.